Hi, everyone. If you are waiting for determining your win number and writing a field plan with Climate Hawks to vote for the climate candidate training, you are in the right place. We're going to wait just a few more minutes and then get started. So really excited to be here with everyone. Hey, y'all. Again, my name is Taylor Billings. I'm super excited to be here with y'all. If you are looking for the Climate Hawks Vote candidate training, you are in the right place. We're going to get started with determining your win goal and writing a field plan in just a few minutes, working on getting the live chat up and running so I can answer y'all's questions. So just a few more seconds, stand by, and we will get started. Thanks. All right. Hey, everyone. So we have the group chat up and running. So if you all have any questions, comments, concerns as we move through this, you're more than welcome to put them up there and I can answer them. So we'll just wait 2 more minutes for folks to hop over from the panels, and we'll get started with determining your win number and writing a field plan. Very exciting. Okay, so we'll get started. So hi, y'all. My name is Taylor Billings. I am currently the press officer at Corporate Accountability International, which is a nonprofit based in Boston, challenging corporations and the life-threatening abuses that they do. So right now, I worked on the election with Next Gen Climate in Ohio. And then prior to that, I did Green Corps, which is a year-long environmental organizing program where I traveled around the country and launched various environmental campaigns. So I've done a lot with building out field plans and organizing for success and organizing to win. And one of the most important things is having a really strong and clear goal and a very clear path to victory there. But aside from that, the reason why I'm in this work and the reason why I think running for climate is so, so important is I'm originally from New Orleans, which given where we're at in the world, it's just, about to be snatched into the jaws of climate change, of the effects of it. So I've seen, firsthand what the oil and gas industry can do to a community, and how not only the land disappears, but the culture itself can go with that. So not only here nationally, but I mean, across the world, the effects of climate change are catastrophic and ruinous. So it's so important now more than ever to run for office and change the narrative and create the political will we need in this moment to win races, change the political system, and take back our government and our world. So if you were on earlier listening to the panels in the main room, it was so inspiring, and we were joined with just a whole host of incredible leaders in this movement. And I'm so excited to be here with y'all today in a more intimate setting to walk through how to run for office in some of the more nitty gritty. So I'm going to share my screen with y'all so you can see my slides. Like I said, do feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat, and we can move through that. Okay, so let's see. This is my Google Hangouts is not. I'm not totally fluent in it, so give me a moment. Okay, great. So can you see my slides? Yes. Okay, it sounds like I can. Okay, great. So win numbers and field plans, some of the most important, bread and butter of your campaign will be this work. So let me just hop on over. Okay, great. So goals. Today, what I want you to walk away with is, one, understanding what a win number is, and what a field plan is, and why they are so, so important. Secondly, what I'd like for you to walk away with is learning, how to determine your win number and use it to draft a field plan. And thirdly, being able to walk away with this, being able to use your field plan every single day, and understanding, why that's so, so important. Okay, so there are three main parts of a campaign. The first is your goal, which is the most important thing, what you're working to achieve. In this case, in an electoral campaign, it'll be your win number. How many votes do you need to win this race? The second part of a campaign is a strategy. So how are you going to reach your goal? How are you going to get to your win number? What's your path? And then the third part is our tactics. How are you going to carry out your strategy to then reach your win number? So really, the most important part of your campaign is going to be the people that you surround yourself with. So this is a little distracting, so I'm going to scoot away from it for a second. But the point is that a candidate cannot do anything without an incredible team behind her. And so when you think about the next 30 or so slides in the next hour we have together, is that at the end of the day, you are only as strong as the people you surround yourself with. So a lot of this nitty gritty stuff you yourself may not be responsible for. Your campaign staff will be the folks driving this and planning it and writing it down and communicating it to you and your staff. But it is important to understand the background behind it and the thought process, so you have a firm understanding of what's going on here and how you're going to win your campaign. Great. So I think I just want to pause for a second and think about the moment that we're in. I don't know if any of you all were able to march yesterday at the People's Climate Movement. I was here in DC, which was wonderful. But I think, it was my first large march after the Women's March, and I think there's just something very special with being out in the streets, being able to protest, having the freedom to do that in a way that can be so powerful, if not, to affect the Trump administration, but to feel, to be with others in solidarity for the immense pain and suffering, frankly, that climate change can bring and is bringing. So overall, I just feel like this is such a powerful moment, and one that we can really resonate in and connect with others on, because, there's so much to fight for here, and so much to believe in, and reminding yourselves of the power of people is just such an important part of this. All that to say is the most important part of your campaign are the people you surround yourself with, because they're the ones who will really help carry all of this out. Great. So what is a win number? So a win number is your goal. This is how, this is what all of it, matters for. So here I have a map, and your goal and your win number is like X on the map. It's where you're headed. It's how many votes you need to win. And there are tons of tools to help you determine this. Throughout this training, I'm going to reference a lot of materials from Wellstone, and from Democracy for America. So they are two incredible resources filled with amazing people who can really help you through this, and have been honing their tools for years and years. So Wellstone and Democracy for America are two great places you can go to. And I have links throughout the slideshow that you can reference afterwards to get those tools. So just as an FYI. Okay, so what is a field plan? A field plan is your strategy to get to your goals. So if your win number is X marks the spot, your field plan is the route that you are going to take to reach your goal. You should use it every single day. So your field plan is something that everything else you do should stem from it, which is pretty impressive and something that's harder to do. But when you do it, every volunteer, no matter what they're doing, can see exactly how their hour or 6 hours is contributing to the overall goal and to the campaign. So again, your field plan details how you're going to get to your win number, which is great. Okay, so from here on out, just in terms of agenda, so y'all know, we're going to go through how to determine your win number, and then how to write a field plan, and then go into a few of the tactics that go into a field plan. So how you're going to contact your voters. So as you have questions, do stop me. We have tons of time for questions at the end. And next session, I'll be leading, how to train and recruit your volunteers, who will really carry out this field plan. So just contextualize that for a little bit. Okay, so first things first is you want to determine your win number. And there are a few questions you should ask yourself while doing this. So the first being, how many people are eligible to vote? How many people are registered to vote? What's the expected turnout? And all of this can come from your city or state. They have these records and they're available to you. So if you ask yourself these questions, you'll be able to walk away with a few pieces of information, including expected turnout. So of the past 6 races that are most like yours, how many people have showed up, which is really exciting. And then you'll want to multiply that times registered voters. So you figure out how many voters are going to show up. You divide that by the number of candidates that are in the race. And then you want to add 2%, so you have a comfortable margin of victory there. And then that's your win number, which is super great. After you determine your win number, you want to think about where the votes will come from. So this is an interesting question, because I think pretty typically we have a pretty set thought process on where, who our base is, who our who the persuadable voters are, all that stuff. But in reality, I think there's a lot baked into that. That's, we need to be intentional about thinking through, and I'll get to that later. But anyway, once you have your win number, you need to think about where these votes will come from. Who is going to vote for you? Who are these people? And do they know about you yet? So this is just another way to look at that. I'm not sure what type of learners we have on the webinar right now. But you want to think about your total registration projected turnout, and that's anticipated turnout. Anticipated turnout times 50% is 50% of anticipated vote, and then plus 1 equals victory. Like I mentioned, many field plans calculate 52% or more to use as the vote goal, just to achieve a margin of safety. And again, this visual is taken from Democracy for America, which is, like I said, they have infinite resources and a lot of webinars and also packets and things that you can go through. So yeah. Any questions on win numbers or why they're important? Okay, cool. So great, I'll move on. So I just wanted to take a second to flag at what level you should be thinking about win numbers at. So this is New Orleans, this is where I'm from. And the big blocks of color, these here, those are districts, as I'm sure you may know. And then individual, these little baby boxes are precincts, which you may also know. But I do this just to illustrate the minuscule, not minuscule, microscopic level we should be operating at. We should know our win numbers in every single precinct, because that's going to really help inform our volunteer plans and our door knocking strategies and all of that fun stuff. So broad strokes, think about things on the block by block, precinct by precinct level, which is really important. Okay, so you've got your win number, you know how many votes you need to win. So now what? So I think a few things here. First, you want to be strategic. So I've worked for a few campaigns where it was so clear that the field plans did not come from the win number itself. It came from like another goal, so whether that be like media or like, visibility or, events. And it's just like, if you do not have your eye on what it takes to win, which is getting the most amount of votes, you will waste a lot of time and resources. When you're thinking about being strategic, it includes taking inventory of the resources that you have or don't have, and what your limitations are and where your strengths are. Second thing is you want to be intentional. So when you have your win number, it's not just like, okay, great, now we're going to run our campaign. It's like very intentionally, what are the next steps that we need to take as a campaign, and where do we need to get the votes that we need to win? Third thing, and I referenced this a little bit earlier, but I would recommend really thinking about the institutional systems that are shaping your opinions of the electorate. That's like a really long-winded way of saying that institutionalized racism is real, it exists, and it definitely exists in the data we have on voters. So pretty typically, the common strategy is to, take your potential voters and then focus on a very small percentage of those who are very powerful and very wealthy and usually white. And then for your donors and your base like that. And then you also, take the swing voters and the small percentage of them who are usually conservative, but you need them to vote for you. So at the end of the day, you end up designing a platform that's built for people that you're not going to end up representing all that much. And because of that, a lot of data has shied away from the masses and the majority in a way that's excluded them from the political process. This usually includes Black people and Hispanic and Latina people and LGBTQ folks and all of the people that are systematically excluded from our current political system. So when you're thinking about where you're going to get your voters and who matters, quote unquote, I would seriously recommend thinking about the systems that have shaped not only our opinions, but also the data available to us. Great. And then a little more practically, you definitely want to work backwards from election day. You need to think really critically about the timeline that you've got going on here. Okay. So there are a few parts of a field plan. The first, you want to have your goals listed, so your win numbers. And you want to have your strategies. So that's, how you're going to get to your goal. You want to have your tactics. So how are you going to contact your voters? You want to have benchmarks. So like on June 15th, where should we be in our field plan? Like how many doors should we have knocked on? How many phone calls should we have made? You should know where you're at every stage, which is really cool. You want to have a timeline, which is similar to a benchmark. And then this is really important and pretty critical, is to have the roles and responsibilities outlined in your field plan. So what type of volunteer leaders are you looking for? What do you want them to carry out on your campaign? What kind of qualities do we want them to have? What are their actual responsibilities on this campaign to make them valued members? So things like that are all really important. Those are the parts of your field plan. Okay, and then finally, you want to get to voter targeting, which, like I mentioned, is important and something to really consider, given the institutional systems that may prevent us from having an accurate representation of the voters in general. Like I mentioned, Democracy for America has an incredible section on building a representative democracy on a night school webinar they did just a couple weeks ago. So I would highly recommend checking that out as you're thinking about this at a more conceptual level and mapping this out. Okay, so voter targeting is real. You're not just choosing doors and knocking on them willy-nilly. There's a real sense of strategy here. So normally you see a block like this. I don't know if anyone's seen this, but do feel free to ask if you haven't seen this or aren't sure about it. So up at the top, you'll see partisanship, which is strongly supports, undecided, strongly opposes. And then down on the left, you'll see turnout. So are these people who always vote, who sometimes vote, who have never voted? And so this is a really common way of dividing up the electorate and seeing who your voters are, who your base are, who the people you need to persuade are, and things like that. So you'll see here, so if people always vote and strongly support you, that's your base, quote unquote. Those are the people who will show up for you and they will vote for you because they always have and they always will. Right here, you've got sometimes vote people who also strongly support you. So those are your GOTV folks. These are the people that you need to get out to vote because if they do get out, they will vote for you. And this corner here, the never vote but strongly support, this is like common practice to just like ignore these folks because they never vote. But I urge you again to think about why they aren't voting, and we will need these people to participate if we want to build a democracy that actually represents the people. So I urge you to resonate with this and think about why they aren't voting, what is preventing them from voting or getting to the polls, and seeing how you can build into your campaign and field plan a way to mobilize them and start to at least get them, or break down the barriers that are preventing them from participating in our democracy. Okay, so after voter targeting, we do have tactics. So there's a way that you can, there are different ways you can contact voters, and these are going to be your tactics. So right away, this is one of my favorite. Contacting voters is super, super important. There are a few ways you can do this, and you want to choose based on available resources and effectiveness. So some tactics are really effective for contacting voters, but they take a ton of money and time. And some are super cheap, but don't do a great job of actually winning your election. So this is when it gets really important to think about your strategy and your goal when you're deciding on your tactics. Just because you are really good at handing out literature, that doesn't mean you're going to win your election that way. So thinking about these tactics under the guise ooh, sorry, I just looked at the chat. Side note, gonna divert. Sandy says, excited to be a part of this. I'm excited for you to be a part of this too. And Jacob Foreman from Colorado Springs, it sounds like, says, our march in Colorado Springs got postponed due to weather, so we're marching today. That's awesome. I heard it was snowing in Colorado, which is crazy. It was very, very hot here in DC. It was like 90 degrees. I'm very sunburned, as you may be able to tell. Anyway, jumping back into tactics. You want to choose based on available resources and effectiveness for these tactics. So we're going to spend a few minutes just going through these. And please, I have the live chat open, so do let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I can share stories or think about them. Okay, so the first is phone banking. I don't know, have any of y'all ever phone banked before? Do tell. But phone banking, one of my first memories of phone banking was a couple years ago. I was in Colorado, actually. We were in Denver, and we were calling to get support for the Clean Power Plan way back in the day. And I was in a room with 3 other volunteers, and one of my friends, Abby, had never phone banked before, and she got herself all worried, and she sat in a chair facing the wall with her head down in her lap and was calling people, praying that they would not answer their phone so she wouldn't have to talk to them. And I think it goes to show, you know, we've come a long way since then. I feel, and Abby feels, a lot more comfortable with getting folks on the phone. But it can be kind of scary to call people at home. But there are some real benefits as to why phone banking is such a, you know, bread and butter in terms of tactics when contacting voters. So this is what phone banking I wish was like, but it's not. So phone banking, there are a few pros. It's really high impact. If you talk to folks on the phone, it's, you know, they are more likely to tell you who they're voting for. They're more likely to come out to an event or volunteer. It's a very high touch is another way to say this. You're really interacting with the voters in an important and concerted way. Another pro is you can do really good targeting. So it's something that's, you know, super focused. So you can say, I want to call 50 people from these 5 blocks at, you know, 6 p.m. and I want to ask them about this event that's really close to them, etc. Alternatively, you can call people from across the country and do the same thing. So phone banking can really grow and expand, as well as shrink down to the block by block level. So yeah, high targeting. Some cons, oh, and it's low cost, right? You need phones. You can use a software to do, you know, like dial phone numbers automatically for you, but you don't have to. You need a script. You can write that on a piece of paper. You can print it out. It's pretty easy. Some cons, it does take some time. It takes a lot of time to prep the materials, to train everyone, to keep people motivated. Staying on the phones for a long amount of time can be exhausting, things like that. And it does take people, right? So you do need folks to be on the phones calling people, and it is one-to-one contact. So one volunteer can talk to only so many voters in a couple-hour shift. So phone banking is something as a candidate you will do a lot of. So it's one of the skills you should really, you know, be comfortable with and be excited about. Okay, canvassing. So canvassing is another really great high touch option for folks. I will start with the cons. Canvassing is, I canvassed for an entire summer in Austin, Texas, working on a campaign to stop the overuse of pesticides that are killing bees. And it is a journey, let me tell you. Knocking on doors, if you haven't done it already, is something that you will do time and time again as a candidate or as working on a campaign, or as just like being political. It's something that we've done for years and years, and is, you know, you meet some of the coolest people in the world, and you have some of the most trying experiences. So it's a really great way to connect with folks. But it takes a ton of time. Walking, the 14 miles it takes to knock on doors and go through neighborhoods is really exhausting. So that's something to consider. It also takes a ton of people. With phone banking, you just sit there and dial, but with canvassing, you need to have people walking the streets, and it takes longer to go house to house than it does just to give a call. Okay, some pros. It is really high impact. Canvassing is incredibly effective. Just like talking on the phone with someone is really important and really nice. That you have that like one-on-one contact. That canvassing is even better because you're face to face with the person. You can really talk to them. You can read their facial expressions. You can. It's easier to go off on talk about things that matter to both of you. Things like that. It's also equally high targeting, just like phone banking. You can decide exactly where you're knocking, who those people are. Obama's campaign did excellent example of this. They were incredibly targeted in terms of who they were talking to, what those people's interests were, why they cared about the campaign or didn't, vice versa. And your city or state, whatever party you're running with too, should have files on folks in your town or municipality or state that will help inform who you're calling and who you're targeting, basically. Okay, mail and literature drops. So these are also really exciting and have a few pros. You can do them while canvassing, right? So if someone doesn't answer the door, or if someone does answer the door but they don't have time, or if you have a great conversation, you can leave literature with them, which is super easy, 2 for 1. There is some visibility with that, right? So your main messaging can be promoted. You can spread your name and recognition, but it's pretty low impact, right? Like no one is speaking to you from the letter. Wish we were in Harry Potter and that could happen, but it doesn't. So you miss that one-on-one contact with folks that you get from canvassing and phone banking. I'm just gonna get some water. Great, probably heard me swallow. Sorry about that. And also with literature drops, it does take some time. If you're going door to door, if you're designing a mail program, it does take a lot of resources. A mailing program is like always more expensive than I feel like you want it to be. And at the end of the day, if you could invest those resources instead in more canvassing or phone banking, you will have a more successful campaign. Conversations win elections, So, and also takes some people. All right, visibility. Y'all, visibility is something that is I feel like we constantly talk about when we talk about elections. Visibility includes things like yard signs and billboards and some TV and radio, but that kind of falls into another category. This includes things like social media posts that aren't well thought out, just like posting just to post, things like that. They're pretty low impact. There's little to no targeting. You can get pretty specific with Facebook ads and things like that, but at the end of the day, like no targeting. There's no two-way conversation with this. If you see a yard sign, you can't talk to it, tragically. I bet it'd have a great conversation and stories to tell, but you can't talk to it. However, the reason why people do so much of it is it's low cost, low time, and it requires really few people. But remember, yard signs can't vote. Go knock doors. At the end of the day, conversations are going to win your election. This graphic is from a Tumblr called Campaign Sick, run by this incredible woman that has a long history in electoral politics and has a lot of great insight into how much yard signs can not help you win your election. So with visibility, those are the main parts. Is it's low impact but low cost. So I think that's why a lot of people do it. Similarly, with social media, the conversation is definitely shifting. I think there's a lot more you can do with Facebook messages, with asking people to volunteer with, gaining traction, but at the same time, they do not do the same amount of work as phone banking or canvassing, things like that. Any questions on any of the tactics that we have that I just talked about? Anything at all? Okay, cool. All right. So after you decide on which tactics you want to use, you want to set goals for each tactic. And these are going to be based off of many things. So, and what I mean by goals, I mean how many votes do you want to get from each tactic, and how many people do you have to talk to reach those goals. So you want to, similar to how you target your voters, you want to target your tactics. So these should be based off of geographic area, resources, and geographic targeting. And like I mentioned earlier, you want to set these goals based on the precinct level. So you'll see here, if you can read, I can read it for you. This is a Canvas tally sheet, again, from the blog Campaign Sick. It's a Canvas tally sheet from a volunteer in 2012. And you'll see at the bottom, it says, issues, totally unrealistic goal, but accomplished. So even though she thought this volunteer could not knock, the goal was 50 doors, could not knock 50 doors, no way, she did. And that's why goals are so important, is the volunteer, the manager, you need to know why these goals exist and why it's so important that you strive to meet them. And the only way you'll see that pipeline there, that from the win number to the Canvas shift, the only way you'll see that is if you really feed through the goals in every tactic and every day. Does that make sense? Any questions? Great. Okay, so after you decide your goals for your tactics, you want to set benchmarks. This is an example taken from Democracy for America on a campaign schedule. So you'll see here that there are 5 realms or 5 areas, which include field, finance, outreach, communications, and admin, and then you have the months. This is only part of the campaign schedule. This ran about 8 months long. But you'll see here in the field column, there's field program begins. And then there's 981 doors knocked with volunteers. And then July, 4,905 doors knocked in total. So you can see at the end of June, if you'll see where you're at with knocking them and understanding where you are in your campaign. And since this field plan flows so directly from your win number, if you're in July and you've only knocked 2,000 doors, you will see how that directly impacts your win number and how you may have to shift your tactics and your resources to make up that extra lift towards the latter half of your campaign. So this is really important to keep yourself on track and again, keeping that flow from your win number. Okay. Similarly, you'll see here some of the other tactics that I mentioned earlier, like outreach. So visibility also includes getting LTEs, which stand for letters to the editor, which is submitted to a local newspaper, can get you some really nice visibility and get your issues that you care about, raise the profile of the issues that you care about. You'll also see communications, press packet, media kit, that all feeds into visibility and, building your reputation in the community. You'll also see here finance, like that's a whole other animal that we are not talking about right now, but clearly so important to running a campaign, especially these days. So any questions about the type of benchmarks you should be setting? And I actually, before I say that, I will mention that this only mentions doors knocked. I would argue that included in this, you should have X number of phone calls made or X number of like social media posts done or X number of followers or whatever. You can set benchmarks, for every single tactic that you have, and you should. And you, being a little generous here, this should be like your campaign manager or your social media director or whoever it may be can set these goals. Yeah, absolutely. So Sandy asks, can you explain the column headings? What's the difference between field and outreach, for example? Definitely. So field is voter contact. So this is like targeted voter, sorry, I'm just repeating myself, targeted voter contact. So this is knocking on doors. This is calling voters. This is like clipboarding at a local event, getting voter contact information and registering your voters. That's your field program. Outreach is a little different. I think here it's like a pretty vague name, and this goes to show that you can name your realms or your areas, whatever makes sense to your campaign. So don't feel siphoned into these. But outreach includes like getting endorsements and reaching out to unions or local groups or like the PTAs. More more visibility and like visits than knocking on doors and talking to voters. Outreach also includes letters to the editor in this case. So building up your reputation and credibility without necessarily direct voter contact. Does that make sense? So field is like direct voter contact. Outreach is group alliances and endorsements, and also indirect voter contact and more about like building up your credibility. Does that answer your question, Sandy? Let me know if it doesn't. Cool. Okay. Great. So this is what a field plan can get into detail. And I will say this was part of like a 13-page document that, again, your campaign manager will write with you. So don't be overwhelmed. This is exciting. This is like your path to success. Field plans are one of my favorite things in the entire world. Cool. Okay. So everyone take a deep breath. You've learned a lot. Oh, great. Okay, and then Sandy asked real fast, just what is communication? And that's media. So that's like interviews and going on talk shows and, having like your press pool follow you when you go to like a ribbon cutting ceremony or whatever it may be. This is like, getting the media to report on your field, basically. Like, candidate Sandy just knocked on 10,000 doors in her first 6 months of the campaign. Like, how exciting, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And you'll have a communications director, communications person kind of leading that. Okay, so in the last couple minutes here, I wanted to go through what this looks like in practice when you're getting down to deciding how many volunteers you need. So there actually is like a mathematical answer to how many volunteers you need to win your campaign, which is pretty cool when you think about it, that you can like literally map out exactly how many people you need to make this happen, which is something that I find just like so great, because it's not this amorphous, like, I don't know, I need everyone. It's like, no, I need X number of people to make this campaign super kick-ass. So I'm just going to walk through how your field plan can show you how many people you need. Okay, so first things first is you want to start with your win number, as we always do with all things. You want to start with your goal. And then these are a bunch of tactics here. So we went through a few of these, but the bigger arrows just represent that more votes will come from these tactics. So you have like group recruitment and endorsement. You have making phone calls, that's phone banking, dropping literature, door knocking, and street canvassing, which include like farmers markets and like busy street corners and things like that. You will also notice that on here, you do not see yard signs. They are not getting you any votes, just FYI. Anyway, so you want to start with your win number and you want to choose a tactic. So in this example, we are using door knocking. So you've already decided how many votes you want to come from door knocking using resources that I'm not going to get into here because it gets like kind of nitty gritty. But there are definitely calculators and things like that, again, like with Wellstone and Democracy for America. So after you choose your tactic, there's a science to it, like I mentioned. You can literally map out how many people you're going to talk to in a given amount of time. So for example, with door knocking or canvassing, the typical rate is 25 doors an hour. Now, I don't know if any of y'all have been to Austin, but turns out there are some really big hills. And when I was canvassing in July on really big hills and going door to door, I did not in any way hit 25 doors an hour at all. So obviously these rates vary greatly depending on where you live, who your volunteers are, how well you're training them, all of these things. So these vary a lot, and it's just important to be okay with that and change your plan accordingly. So flexibility is key. Anyway, so these are just some numbers to help you out, to help you do the math and figure out how many volunteers you need. So I'm about to go through how to figure out how many volunteers you'll need. And I urge you, if you're not a math person, don't zone out. I'm not a math person, but this is important. And if you really hate math and you already know that you will literally never do this not equation, but like do this process, I urge you just to think big picture, how important it is to see the line between the goal, the win number, and how many volunteers you need on a certain day. Okay, all that to say, let's assume you need to talk to 864 voters in 10 days. You're 10 days away from that July goal of 4,000 doors knocked, and you need 864 done to hit your goal and stay on pace. So how many volunteers are you going to need to make that happen? Because I guarantee you personally do not want to knock on a 864 day, you don't want to talk to 864 voters in 10 days because that sounds miserable and very hard. So what you'll do is using those field constants that I mentioned earlier, those like static numbers, you can divide up how many hours of knocking it will take. So you need to talk to 864 voters. Usually, you can talk to 6 voters every hour. This is like how many people answer their doors, how many people are actually voters, how many people are at home. So that means you need 144 hours of knocking doors over 10 days. So what you're going to do next is 144 hours divided by 3 means that each volunteer usually signs up for a 3-hour shift. So you need 48 shifts over 10 days completed. So 48 shifts divided by 10 days means 5, rounded up, shifts or volunteers per day. So if you wanted to knock 864 voters in 10 days, and like I mentioned, your campaign manager, your field staff will take care of this for you, but I think it's so important just to see where this comes from and see the work that goes in behind it. So 864 voters in 10 days, you'll need 5 volunteers to show up and knock doors for 10 days. And there you go. So now that's just talking to voters. That doesn't mean how many doors you need to knock on, because some people aren't home. Like I said, some people will have like really mean no soliciting signs and you don't want to knock on them. So you'll need 3,600 doors to knock on, which basically isn't that many if you think about apartment buildings and you think about your community. So if you need to talk to 864 voters, odds are you're in a pretty big city already. So you'll need 3,600 doors to knock on. Okay, so everyone take a deep breath. That's the most nitty-gritty I will ever get with anything like this. So I appreciate you bearing with me, but like I mentioned, you can refer to this always and just see that there is a science to it, kinda. Okay, so we're back. it's time for us to engage our volunteers. So we know how many we need after this. Now the important part is engaging them and inspiring them and showing them, explaining to them these goals in a compelling way that makes them feel and understand that they're a part of something much bigger than this, 3-hour session on a Saturday or what have you. Engaging your volunteers and building them up to be leaders on your campaign is such a valuable asset, because I know we don't want to stay up until 3 a.m. doing this math for every week of the campaign. So you need volunteers to do it with you, and feel like they own part of the campaign and are responsible for the progress that we're all going to accomplish together. So our last point is just engage them, rely on them, and train them well, and they will help you achieve your win number, win your campaign, and use your field plan. So that's all I have. We have about 8 minutes left for questions. If you don't have any, that's fine. If you do, that's even better. But I will say at 12:28-ish, I will join Morgan, the mayor of Truckee, California, for a question and answer session on what it's like to be an elected official, which will be super fun, and run an election, or run a campaign, excuse me. And after that, we will be going through how to engage your volunteers and how to inspire them, which is something that I love and have a lot of stories to tell for that. So that's what we'll be doing over the next few hours. So I'll pause there. Any questions, comments, concerns from y'all? Just a side question, is this training going to be available to rewatch later? Jacob, I was actually thinking that myself. I think yes. I know I have my slides and you'll get them afterwards. I do believe this is going to be recorded and available at this link afterwards though, but I can double check. Any other questions? Any questions? Okay, cool. Yeah, so Sandy, that's a great question. She asked, out of curiosity, when door knocking, do you ask if they normally vote? So a lot of this information comes from the voter file, which is public information, publicly available, that tells you when people have voted. So there's actually a really funny story of, I think it was Ted Cruz who sent out, it was a mail piece that mimicked like a government piece of mail, like shaming people who hadn't voted and comparing their vote history to their neighbor's vote history because they could, which is terrifying. So would not recommend that as a strategy. But all that to say is the voting history is public information. So you can be like, oh, like I saw you voted in the last election. So did I. Like, that's so great. So you already have that information. What you do with it, though, is up to your campaign and up to your strategy. So I'm sure that there's been canvassing where people are like, oh, have you, I'm going to actually take this off so you can see my face. Hello. So there have been, I'm sure there have been campaigns where you're like, hey, have you voted recently? Like, how's that been going? So all that to say is you can build it into the wrap or build it into the script that you have, or you can just have that information in the back of your mind and use it to target voters as well and prioritize them. Does that answer your question? Great. Okay. Well, are there any other questions or resources that you are interested in that I can help facilitate or anything like that? Ooh, okay, Sandy, where are you from? Do you mind? You don't have to share that, but I'm interested. Sandy said that they have an incredibly low voter turnout for the city, but this is the first time they will use online voting. So that's new turf. Yeah, that's really exciting. That's something in In New Orleans, where I'm from in Louisiana, they definitely do not make voting easier for anyone. I shouldn't say that. No, I should. That's true. So, oh, great, Northern Ontario. Yeah, I'm super interested in that as well. I don't know off the top of my head any like numbers for that, but I'm trying to think of cities in the U.S. that have started that. There are a couple cities that like we're just adopting like online voter registration, which is like revolutionary, even though it's not. It should be a thing. But I'd love to get numbers for you. I can look into that. But I think online voting is super interesting, especially how like digital ads are going to be so important, because you could probably just click on them and then it'll take you to the voting website, which is like really like, are you more likely to vote for a candidate if you click on their ad to take you to the like government page? I don't know. So all that to say is I'm really interested to see how that works out, and I can poke around and see if if there's any like thought pieces on that, or how that will impact voting turnout soon. Yeah, and she's Sandy's saying that she thinks targeted Facebook ads will be a huge player in this, and I totally agree. But again, like I do want to stress that like people are people, right? And we thrive off of face-to-face contact. So I'd be interested to see what strategy candidates take with voter contact, if they like let that, fall off to the wayside, or if they hop back on. Cool. Well, I am going to hop off so I can go talk to Morgan and run the question and answer section. I think you'll have a link for that in your email. Otherwise, I will be back on in an hour to run the volunteer section of the training, which is my favorite, and I love talking about it. So I hope y'all can join me for that. Otherwise, though, it was awesome talking with y'all. I will send you my slides and see if this recording is available. And I will look into online voting, which seems really great. So also, though, with the online voting, could be interesting if there were like fake voting websites like they had during the US election that were like bogus sites that like misled people to either divulging information or thinking they were voting when they really weren't. So I wonder what the security is around that too. All that to say, awesome chatting with y'all. Hope you walked away with some tangible skills, and do feel free to reach out. Any questions, comments, concerns. My email is tbillings@stopcorporateabuse.org. It's on the slides. Y'all will have it. So yeah, I'll talk to y'all soon. And thanks again for tuning in. Bye, y'all.